Tēnā mana, tēnā reo, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Lensol, ingoa, tāpui karakia, hoki iri, o rārama, o te whakaara, o te tangata, o te oroha. Te po e hiri nei ia tātou, Māori ora ia tātou, haumia ui e tai ia. Thank you and welcome everyone to our November 18th council meeting. Welcome to our members of the public. Welcome to staff. Thank you for your efforts and your input in today's meeting. We've got a big agenda. We've got a lot to get through. Have we got anyone online who's lined up and ready to go? Everyone can hear us. So we'll make a start. Do we have any apologies? There being none, can I get a mover and seconder? Oh, we don't need to do that if we've got no apologies. So public forum, we'll move straight to Jan right to present to us, please. Jan, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much.
So Jan, thank you for presenting today. Notice we have got a big agenda and we're restrained to the 5 minutes, so we'll let you know.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'd like to introduce my colleague Lisa Cook. Lisa is Deputy Chair of the Commonwealth Heritage Trust, and I'm a very recent chair of the Commonwealth Heritage Trust. We will not speak specifically to our request this morning, but instead we've got a few points here that we'd like to make. Firstly, the Treasury Research Centre and Archive is different to a local museum. You'll recognise some of these points from a late night communication last night from me, if you managed to read it. The Treasury serves two districts. We're therefore sub-regional. We're a specialist archive, which means we're wildly expensive to run. Our operating costs are enormous, and we are different to a local museum in that we are not purely visitor oriented. Our purpose is to preserve, conserve records, paper-based records. To give you a wee bit of an idea about the cost of running the Treasury, it costs $23,000 just to keep the archive facility running with absolutely no human activity inside. $23,000 a year. Costs $57,000 a year to run the outfit with volunteers. So our costs are enormous. Across a 3-year period, we receive an average of $50,000 a year from the 2 councils. And it costs more to run with volunteers, more than that to run with volunteers. So there is no staffing allowed for in the grants that we receive, or the payments that we receive from the 2 councils. That money to pay staffing is required to come from public funding. And as everyone knows, public funding has dried up very suddenly, very abruptly, and very badly. However, having said that, over the last 3 years, we have been exceedingly successful with public funding. We've raised, I think, around about 350,000, maybe 400,000. So public funders like what we do, but the thing is that we're now competing for a much smaller pool of money, and we're competing with food banks and the likes of Women's Refuge and that sort of thing. And frankly, there's no comparison. We completely get that. The Treasury was created by the community with support from public funders across a period of about 200 years. The Treasury was fundraised for by a group of people, mainly I think from Thames. They raised $1.1 million. The Treasury is now valued around about $1 million. It sits on council-owned land in Queen Street. The driving force behind that community effort was largely the Dunwoodies. When Laurie Dunwoody died in 2016, he had begun talking with the council, we understand from his wife Geraldine, about the possibility of the council taking on the Treasury the same way as a library. He recognised that the model was not sustainable long term. We've discovered it is not sustainable long term in this model. We are making enormous fundraising efforts, shifting from focus on planning application writing to philanthropy and sponsorship and other fundraising. So in a breakdown, a table of which breaks down some figures, which you'll see later on this afternoon, you will notice that we've got a focus on key staffing, essential key staffing, fundraising, thank you, communications, but most importantly, industry-specific financial and strategic advice. The Treasury needs guidance. And also our ongoing operating costs that are not staff related. Can I just ask Lisa for you to speak briefly about how you?
Yeah, so I have had the privilege of looking through some of the archives. One of the archives that have come out was a ledger from the Kirikiri settlement. This was written in 1877 and it's all in Te Reo Māori. If there wasn't staff there to find these kinds of resources, that ledger would sit there and no one would know about it. So not just for local hapu iwi is that important, but on a national level that's important to have historical documents like this found. And yesterday I just took it up to Auckland Speed Concerns with the hope of getting it digitised and sharing it, and ultimately that's what the Treasury is doing, sharing our local histories and stories and other narratives. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. So we'll open it up for councillors for questions. Questions for clarification.
So around the clarifications, and thank you for coming along and tell us. I think it's an important project. The 23,000K to run the organisation, is that to run the archives, air conditioning, and all? Is that what that money pays for?
It is Terry. Yes.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it's really important. We just brought all our polymetar stuff over there and had them locked up for 3 months before they could even put it somewhere. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So it would have been locked up to make sure that there were no pests associated with it. We need bugs and things like that eat paper.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
But am I correct in thinking that our Treasury archive here is the only one in the country outside of major cities?
We believe so, Martin, yes.
Right.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. The founding board created something amazing and they created a beast.
So you could, would it be correct to say it's a blessing and a?
And it's a massive asset and a massive liability.
Yeah.
Robin.
Sorry, I've misunderstood. Or when you said that there was a worth of $1 million, were you talking about the building or the collection?
The building.
And the collection has
Collection can't be valued.
right. Okay.
Can't even value heritage, history, people's stories.
Thank you.
Liz, can I just make sure we get the spelling of your name right?
LISE.
Thank you. Can I just ask, how far back do those go?
1850s. I think there's been some, there is some in there that go back even further, but they relate to England.
So when it comes to researching, things like, the original makeup of Thamesworth, for example, or, like that, is that form part of the work that you do?
I'd like it to. And those are strategies our board is working towards. Partnering with all those kinds of plans. It takes resource.
And time.
John?
Couple of things I'd like to understand and clarify. You mentioned the figure, I think around 23,000 is the core. I don't understand that. Then mention the figure of around 7,000, which included the staff, the
No, it includes the volunteers
volunteers.
who need to be managed. And it's, when I say managed, their work needs to be managed. So then that's when you start adding in some key staff. But, yeah, that's when it starts to get expensive, I think, when people are involved.
And I'd just like to understand a little bit about the National Archives and how this room sits within that and what support, if any, you receive through that. Just explain that.
Well, support that we receive from Te Papa is $2,000 a year through the National Services Te Pairami, their outreach facility. So $2,000 for to buy conservation supplies. That's the acid-free materials that all of the records are stored in. They also have a variety of expert advice, which is available to organisations like ours. During the period of the formation of the Treasury, the board was in regular contact with Te Papa. The Treasury is well known to Te Papa. Right at this moment, we're waiting on an outcome of an application to National Services Te Pairami for their expert knowledge exchange program. We're asking them for assistance to guide us through this period. It will be, whilst there might not be something that's exactly the same happening throughout the country, there will be similar things happening for the industry, I'm sure.
They're also very limited in their funds. It's not a place that can get funding from. They're scrambling for their own funding. That's our question in New Zealand.
Thank you. Peter, do you have a question?
But my enlightened colleague has asked it.
Oh, well done.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you so much, Dan and Lise, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your attention, folks.
Can I get a mover in a second, please, to receive public forum? Peter and thank you. Those in favour? Aye. Are there any items not on the agenda today? Aye. There being none. Any conflicts of interest? Being none, thank you. We'll go to external minutes for receipt. So could I get a mover in a second, please, for the external minutes? Peter, thank you, and Kelly, all those in favour?
Aye.
We're going to receive the minutes for the external committees as well, and then I'm going to ask the individual delegates for those committees to just maybe say a few words and give us an update on, if you want to, there's no obligation. So can I get a mover and a seconder for item 2, please? which is the minutes for Hauraki Golf Forum, Transport Committee, Waikato Civil Defence and the Waikato Mayoral Forum. So Delhi and John, we just received, so all those in favour?
Aye.
Okay, so I'd like to invite Delhi, please, to maybe just give us a brief update on that.
Yes.
I know it's a big subject, but
Yeah, having just got back from Wellington at 9 o'clock last night, I haven't even read the minutes to make sure that they're correct, but it was really lovely hosting the Hauraki Golf Forum here and lovely to have Martin and Robin along for that as well, and to go and visit the Kopu Marine Precinct and have that kōrero, and to also ascertain, because one of the things that was discussed at Maraetai earlier this year was a lack of desire of people, particularly with the larger yachts, to sail down here and use our haul-out facilities. And talking with the experts the other day, they said, no, that's actually not the case, that the Kalupa doesn't tend to hang on to the keel of a boat. And there is no barrier to those guys coming down here and hauling out. So they're facing very long wait lists to get, you know, the bottom scrape or whatever, haul out facilities which have been reduced. Updates on Kalupa and the really good work that's been done by Mana Whenua in conjunction with, you know, government parties, and the message has got through very strongly to MPI et al. That we're going for eradication rather than management. And there was, you know, a very compelling update on the spread of this nasty thing, and Len can correct me, the Kalupa, that at the moment they're favouring the suction methodology with a combination in places of using these mats to exclude light, which they need. We didn't get an update on the Niagara this time, did we? Which is the boat, the shipwreck that's got tanks full of fuel oil. Len.
congratulations on the
Yes.
result, and I think it's a hard one to value, but there's been a huge on that. It's probably sitting somewhere over $100 billion. But an extensive piece of work done on that. I don't think you were there, Delhi, for the presentation for the tour of Kopu Marine. But
First half.
you did. So, but Lorenzo was really upbeat about that progress on it, but we're very clear that that facility is going to provide opportunities, not just in terms of pull out, but in terms of the ability for large vessels to kayak at the port and the jetty and get work done while they're moored there. At the moment, they can't do. There's nowhere for them to tie up. So that was a really good presentation to the whole Hauraki Golf Forum, and got very good response. So it was pretty positive. Some challenges ahead, particularly that Niagara thing. That's a concern. So it's a leak. It's going to impact right through. Sedimentation in the Hauraki Gulf was an issue as well. So an update on that. That's
What about the marine reserves being put up? Is there any comment about that?
yes, it's probably gets into a lot more detail than we can go into today, but that's ongoing. And general pretty good support across the board, but obviously it's going to be and there's some frustration that some quarters people think they don't go far enough, but it'll be interesting. And bottom forward is the other issue. But the interesting comment which I had is that bottom trawling, if you do a complete ban on bottom trawling, there's a lot of people looking for, you have this knock-on trawlers go into other areas and trawl in areas where bottom trawling isn't banned. So you get this push effect out into North and Bay of Plenty. And so there's a degree of balancing that's going on there.
The other one was the, call it a bycatch, I suppose, but the capture of seabirds inadvertently whilst fishing. And there was a very compelling presentation on that from the Ocean Birds people. And I'll be attending an online meeting to follow up on that because the education is not going far enough and there are resources around how to avoid having catching birds whilst you're out fishing. The other one was the signage around Kalupa, which currently says seaweed, chuck it back. And I noticed there's still one at Grothy's Beach in Whitianga. That is not best practice. It should not be seeing Kalupa and chucking, cleaning it off your prop or your rudder and chucking it back in the ocean. They need to get all those signs down and actually say to people, put it in a plastic bag and burn it or do something else with it, but, you know, put it in the rubbish, but don't throw it back into spread.
The stock been running 3 seconds today. Pretty impressive. So. All right, so thank you, Delhi. We'll move on, but that's going to be an ongoing discussion. The next one is in Waikato. Regional Transport Committee. So as you know, John and I have been working on that, and I'd asked Terry to stand in for yesterday, but John's the point guy on that, and he's been involved in those discussions all the way through. And I think it's fair to say that we've had a significant influence on the government policy statement on transport and roading, particularly as it applies to recovery and resilience rebuilding. So, John, a few words on that?
Yeah, I enjoy these meetings. Actually, I think they're worthwhile. What was obvious yesterday was Len and myself have been pushing the resilience roading networks as being one of the priorities that Waka Kotahi needs to address, and hand in glove with the government policy statement. That's where they're prepared to put the money, and they have increased the funding for that, Len. The couple of things of interest locally, the Kinkitty Bridge, which was we received $12 million to replace, rebuild. They went out for tender, significantly over what they expected. So that's come off the to-do list at the moment while they rescope and see what they can do to perhaps bring it in at a lower cost. The significance for that locally was, of course, Waka Kotahi did take land under the Public Works Act and houses and what have you some time ago. Those houses are still occupied. I raised it with them. They are not going to see any. There are people still living in those houses. They're not going to see anybody living under the bridge when it's built. They are going to make sure they actually have a house. So
John, just clarify, I think one of those has been demolished already.
One has been, yeah, and one's still being lived in. 25A is going well. That's they're hopeful. They're not going to announce it anywhere, but they're hopeful that it will be ahead of schedule. Once they get the piles down, then they'll be more confident about that. The piling. One of the piles had to drive down 40 metres. It was Terry, wasn't it? Yeah. The other ones were down to 15 or 20 metres. Then they go and put another pile in, and to find rocks 40 metres. So they're not going to say yet it's going to be finished ahead of time, but if it progresses, they're hopeful. So that was good news. Pavement failure was brought up. And I feel sorry for Waka Kotahi because they are suffering from 10 to 12 years of underinvestment in their maintenance, and know they have a major problem right throughout the country. It was raised with them, and I don't know quite. There's 8 to 10 kilometres of State Highway 1 just completed between Tokoroa and Taupo. Brand spanking new, only just opened. That has had major pavement failure, and it's a lot of it's got to do with the weather. You know, they try and do the roads when it's wet. They just fail. And that's because too much pressure is put on the contractor to get the job done within a certain time or not. I don't know. But it's certainly got some major pavement failures happening nationally. Anything else from yesterday, Terry?
Yeah, they talked a little about the transportation, public transport around the area, done some work around that. Just the Catherine talking for that. They were also talking about school bus, how that works and how the operators work. Yeah, so there's real good work going on there and they're engaging with the different pressure groups and understanding their needs. There is a funding model coming out for those groups who have a bus, a local bus, or doing a medical run round. The applications were around the 10 to 14,000. They're lifting up to $20,000 for those people to apply, for those groups that, you know, transport people around. Waka Kotahi was taking total cost for disability transportation, so they would pick up the total cost of that. Yes, it's some positive stuff coming through, really. Yeah.
And just two more things. One of them I think is a pretty good thing. Pepe Bridge, that goes out for tender in September, and I'm betting sure as God made it in apples, that will come in way over. Again, so
No one's taking that
we're
bet.
still on track to Pepe Bridge, okay? But the really nice thing that happened yesterday, the staff can take some kudos for this, is David Spears from Waka Kotahi. He mentioned this council specifically, and there are a number of other councils in the room, as to having a very good working relationship at a governance level and a staff level. And to get that was quite a positive thing. So you can probably take credit for that, Len. They do hold that relationship.
Keeping their voice.
Definitely staff. And of course, so that was nice to get a mention like that when there are a number of other councils sitting at that table.
Thank you, John.
Sorry, so with the Kirikiri
No
Bridge,
questions. Okay, what do you want?
with the Kirikiri Bridge, the
Yeah.
significance of that, and people might go, well, why is that being sorted out? That at the moment can only take a single axle truck and trailer unit from Leeches. But it's got a weight limit. Is that correct?
No, I don't think that's right. I don't think so. It's more the angle and
How
the
it connects
approach.
to that roundabouts and, you know,
Okay, I thought I heard that last term, but
yeah, Pyro. Instantly for long.
Let's ask the expert. So it hasn't got weight limits on it though, has it, Bruce?
I think there might be some weight. We don't get a lot of traffic coming down 26.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not a huge issue, but the decoy's coming at 4 metres, so.
Okay.
Yeah, that $4 million might change too, I think.
It'll never be.
One time, I
It
know.
was cheaper yesterday.
Wait for things to move.
Mm.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Terry. Waikato Civil Defence, John, are you happy to say a few words, or are you just?
Yeah.
Just on
I think the report that I tabled last time covers the sets of minutes, so there's nothing I can specifically update outside of that. We've had one meeting subsequent to that, which was last week, and the main focus on that at the moment is the review of the Civil Defence Act, which is getting a lot of attention at the moment. There's 2 or 3 subcommittee meetings now coming up to look specifically at input that the regional council will have into that, which has to be in sort of mid-October-ish, I think, somewhere around there, or late October. And I'm part of that group as well, so I've got a couple of meetings coming up on that, but outside of that, it was the meeting was all over done in about an hour 20. So
Did you do that online?
No.
You went in person. All right, thank you, John. Any questions for John at this stage? Okay. Waikato Mayoral Forum. I think I've already given a bit of an update for councillors on this. Obviously some ongoing discussions there, and Three Waters and the region we're getting in is a big thing for the Mayoral Forum. And still lots of uncertainty, but hopefully over the next few weeks we can get some clarity around that. And that's probably the topic that's dominating the Waikato Mayoral Forum at the moment. So I'll probably leave that there. And as we move forward, we'll be able to update some information on that tracking. Anything to add on that? Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to minutes for confirmation. And can I get a mover and a seconder to receive the conserving report, please? We'll take these, board by board, so we'll receive the item one, is that the council?
Through the chair, item one is just to receive the report. And I would suggest that you do item two at the same time, which is to receive the committee board minutes.
So we'll do item one and item two. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Martin and Lily, thank you. All those in favour?
Sorry, can just the correction on page 62. It's got moved and seconded by Connell and Martin. Obviously, that should be Connell and Rodley.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. That's crazy. Thank you, Rodley.
Thank you, councillor Roberts.
Subject to that correction.
I just feel so comfortable first.
Yeah, I think a lot of items is the EC council meeting for the 8th of August 2023. Can I get a mover and a seconder that's through an accurate record, please?
Yeah, I have been moved.
Terry, seconder, record. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Item 4, this is the meeting that was held last week, and this was well done to Barry and the team for getting this included so that we can get this.
What page are you referring to?
So we're on.
Through the chair would be page 35.
Good.
So there were a couple of things in the Whangatā Community Board meeting to do with installing some safe parking zones outside of the swimming pool, which was supported by the community board. We just need to sign that off. So can I get a mover and a seconder, please?
Yeah, I'm happy.
Toby move and
Gary.
Gary, sorry. Momentary.
We're not used to seeing.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Right, item 2.1, annual dog control report. So we've got Alice.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Yes. Talk about dogs, yep. Through the chair, I just need to note that on page 74 and 75, the infringement numbers needed just to be amended from 157 to 150. That was just a reporting timeframe.
Okay, so that's the totals at the bottom.
It is.
Through the chair, we're happy to share this on the screen.
Does anyone need that shared?
I'm happy.
So, we've got the report, we'll take it as read. Alice, is there anything else that you want to add to this?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight, so from the 18th of May, we've had our new bylaw and policy going so far, so good. But obviously the new restrictions start from Labour weekend, so our signage is all out, our flip signage ready to go. And yeah, coming into the summer, we'll see, but we're expecting it to be fine, so there weren't any major changes.
Just a comment. I see that there's been allowable access for dogs to go on buses in Auckland and stuff like that. Is that sort of thinking about something in Thames or what we're doing here? Is there any discussion around that?
No, it would be we haven't discussed it. It would be a public place for dogs to be on lead. They're not.
Yeah, they're going to be muzzled.
Yeah, probably a choice for the transport operators.
Right. Okay.
And we don't have the whole heap of public transport that
Not to connect the bus.
is there, which is
I think so.
come up at some stage. Martin.
So in the 21-22, the comparison between that and 22-23, got infringements of pretty much doubled from 85 to 157. But then that doesn't sort of really show just up above there's what all the infringements were. So have we got any sort of feeling as to why that almost doubled?
Yes. So the main changes were around the, but partly the 21-22, we were in and out in lockdown still. So that did have an effect on all of our infringement numbers. We're a lot lower over the COVID times. Yes, that is the main thing. The areas that they increased and were general failure to comply with the bylaw and failure to register on time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alice. So just an observation, the new bylaws kick in Labour weekend.
Yes, the new.
And the process, we know, working through this and public consultation was quite extensive. Some of the areas in which we were asked to look at, based on consultation, look at some of the proposals, and council listened, moved, changed and adapted, and I think that's a good example of council responding to public feedback and consultation, and we got some really good results out of that, particularly in Tuning and Hot Relief. So well done, picking up on those and listening.
Can I ask a question? What I'm curious about is a lot of people who are non-permanents come in with dogs and have the Auckland or Hamilton registration and all those sorts of things. Are there problems with dealing with those people? They're in the car and off.
So usually, because all of their tag numbers are registered to a national dog database that we all have to report to. And so all of your details when you register a dog are available to other territorial authorities. So we usually don't have any problems. We also work with the other councils quite well. So we'll book dogs for them if one of our dogs has been naughty in another district, and we'll go, help them interview or
okay.
things like that. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, any further discussion? So I'll move that this be received. And can I get a second, please? Kelly, thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. That is adopted.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Okay, so just to be clear, I've moved that minutes in entirety, which includes item review instructions, so I've seen a copy of our report to the secretary below. I'm sure we'll be waiting. Our report.
Bloody AD.
Item 2.2, 8.6 district grants. Welcome, Dean. I'll get a move in a second, please. We're just receiving the performance reports at the moment. Robin and John, thank you. Dean, welcome. Is there anything that you want to add to the report? We'll take this as read, but anything you want to add at this stage?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. There's probably nothing really to highlight other than generally all the KPIs are being met. If they're not being met, then the groups are managing them. And there's one KPI that wasn't met, which is highlighted in the report, and the action is to deliver that programme next year. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So just to be clear, these are performance reports for the organisations which have ongoing annual grants. Any further questions?
Yeah, I just think it's worth noting that one of the ones that wasn't met with was Creative Coromandel, and it lines up with what he heard in the public forum with application was declined. So that's just emphasising the fact that it's getting harder and harder to get lottery and other external monies.
Yeah, I just want to confirm what Martin's saying, that these groups really do a great job, that they are struggling getting financial support. And like what Jan said this morning about the treasury, I think it's a really important asset too that we should consider. So it's added more pressure to the grants fund, but I think it's a really key things that we should be supporting. Yeah.
So, and just a little bit further context around that KPI for creative handle that partner up mentoring program. The additional part of that I got caught up in COVID. So the idea is you do the mentoring program, then you do an exhibition, or the exhibitions couldn't go ahead because of COVID lockdowns, and there's a legacy of that. I think there's also a realization that the numbers engaged in that partner up program are probably smaller than there's delivery value money. So, but a big chunk of that partner up mentoring program was funding that was not council. So that was outside. So they're making their own decisions about how they move forward.
Just one point through the chair, if I can. We gave money annually to the theatre in Hamilton. Is that a grant? Does that still go on? Ongoing? We were giving 50 cents per ratepayer. Is that still?
So, pretty clear, I don't believe that's part of the different grants, because the report here. Are you referring to the rate for the regional council?
It was for the Hamilton Theatre, the construction of the $70 million Hamilton Theatre, and they were asking support from the different councils, and the further way out you went, the less you paid, and we were paying a 50 cent per ratepayer number.
So Terry, that's not included.
No, it's, I just asked, is that part of these grants?
So,
Is it an annual grant some other way, is it?
I think that might be reasonable, but it's definitely not included in this budget.
Okay, yeah.
Robin?
Really, Dean, I just wanted to say thanks for this report, because I remember last time in the long-term plan, we were allocating this funding in a vacuum of not really understanding what it was these did, what the KPIs were, you know, what our support was really contributing. And so I feel a lot more confident going into the LTP next year, knowing that we're actually getting reports on these organisations and we can see the good that they do in our communities. So thank you for that.
Thank you. So we've got a mover and a seconder on the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Thank you. So the well. Thank you. All right, thank you, Dean. Much appreciated. So we'll move on to item 2.3, review of the DCDC alcohol control bylaw. Leslie. So can I get a member to receive the motion, please? Billy and Rika, thank you. Over to you.
Your worship and councillors, this report is about the alcohol control bylaw, sorry, which is up for review. And so we have done an internal review of the bylaw, and as you see in the comprehensive report, we have some recommendations for change. The resolutions that you've got before you enable us to now work on amending the bylaw to ensure it's robust and it's appropriately addressing issues that will raise. It gives us also opportunity to have further discussion with shareholders such as police.
So we're lining ourselves up with national legal framework. Is that what we're doing?
Absolutely, yes.
Sean,
No, nothing to add if it does. Thank you.
any questions? Discussion?
Yeah, and I've mentioned this in the last term as well, so I'm still going to say it again. So on page 88, when it talks about the number of alcohol infringement offence notices, I get that it's very high in Whangamata, but when you look at 1,408 out of almost 2,000, it's a huge percentage, and it does concern me that in a way, it almost just seems to be accepted that that's gonna happen, and it's very hard to control. We'd have to put hundreds of police in, I guess, to stop that altogether, but I'm still very concerned that Whangamata and other places within the peninsula are just, have this reputation for, well, people will come along and drink. It did trend down in 2023, but then that's because it's only half of the year. So I just want to raise that as a concern.
Yeah, well, the problem is, of course, the visitors, a lot of them are permanent, and a lot of the problem is parents are giving them alcohol, then they go out and they probably take a bit of alcohol with them. So it's really problems with parental control that seem to be the problem. And the ones who come, young people who come in themselves with alcohol in the car in the old days, that every car was stopped coming in and the alcohol was taken out and poured out on the spot. And that I'm talking some years ago, and that made a huge difference. But we just don't seem to have police resources to do that.
So further to Gary's comments, is there an analysis of the months of the year that those are the highest infringements? I don't expect you to have figures like that, but certainly those infringements peak around the summer period.
Through Chair, the bylaw has permanent bans in our town centres all year round, but otherwise mainly they kick in at that summer period, which is just before Christmas till the first week of January. So nearly all of these infringements would be in that wider ban period, which is 3 weeks of the summer. And certainly if we went through an analysis of police, I think Councillor Gottlieb's point, you'll probably see that spike around Williamson Park. And the fact that police have a presence there for that 4-day period. And it's quite common. I mean, we have staff there during that time. It's quite common to see young people walking to that park with alcohol.
Thank you.
I think also we're looking at absolute numbers here, but probably at that time in Whangamata, the population was probably 75,000 or something like that. So the proportion of the population may not be any different.
On the problem, which is people filling places up more than they're allowed to. You know, the toilet ratio and everything is just possible to police, but some places there might be 40 people in one section.
Yeah.
Yeah, just really, I don't know, is there any understanding of the age groups that these offenders? Because, you know, we've got if you're 18 and over at the hotels and pubs, if you're under 18, you're drinking in the streets sometimes. And sometimes it's the younger ones that are being caught.
Yes, yeah, so police board, we request that information at this stage, but we do work with them much better over the last 2 years and moving into this summer about how we're going to target our messaging. But then how we put new signage up, quickly new signs designed in our hotspot locations. So we'll work with police about where those hotspots are so that we can make sure there's appropriate signage. Yeah, and there has been a bit of a shift, as you can see, in around 2020. The police's approach to it shifted a little bit, and that fluctuates in a regulatory pendulum between going too hard into the anti-media messaging. I think you would call that. It was the police are ruining holidays. Then we had some issues, so that relaxed, and we had alcohol issues, and they swung back to enforcing the bylaw more rigidly. So we worked pretty closely with them about the messaging and where those signs are.
The police have improved, but back in 2017, district commander then determined he wasn't going to have police come and patrol it. And I tried to go above him, but that's when all the problems started, because they didn't have the police there they used to have. Traditionally, he didn't think he was wasting police resources by coming in, and that just went out of control.
Then we're going to move this along, because essentially what we're doing is we're just lining ourselves up. We've agreed that the bylaw has been reviewed. The team have done a great job. Thank you so much. That I'll put the motion. So all those in favour? Aye. Yes, that's carried. Thank you so much.
Can I just ask a question at this particular time through the chair? And it's just we've got a bit of a concern in town over vapes and pee pipes. I don't know if this is the right opportunity to open it, but Is that something that should come through council? Because there's concern in town that these have started up and saying, how do they get the pick to do this when they get
I
down?
think I think it's okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think it's quite,
Yeah.
pertinent, it's quite topical,
Yeah.
especially with teachers and schools.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something that we can. As a workshop, something just so we, as council, we can see back.
That'd be good.
But yeah, it is quite topical.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, thank you. We go to is the establishment. Thank you. So the establishment of our very exciting new system museums. So Lorna's here to present. So just so that everyone is aware, the item 5, which you should all have, it might not be on your agendas, but Robin is going to be nominated by myself as the chairperson. So you're being asked to endorse the appointment of Robin Sinclair, Councillor Sinclair as the chairperson, with Councillor Yuri Percival as deputy chair. So we'll start by receiving the report, please. Can I get a moment and a second? I'll move it and thank you. Lorna, would you like to do this?
Just a couple of points, just to acknowledge that the scope has been narrowed and emergency management will be going to full council. There is just a couple of wording changes that are being picked up. I do see in the recommendation that CE is able to make those if necessary, but just on page 93, probably about 3 lines down, just the Sustainability and Resilience Committee is delegated the following terms. And then on page 94, the committee is delegated the following, and then just to recommend to council approval of, and then the bullet points of what they are recommended. Just also to say that the committee shall meet at least 4 times a year, but they may meet more if necessary, and that would be something that we will schedule with governance and talk to the members about if and when required. And that we are anticipating, if this is approved, that we will have our first committee meeting before the year, looking likely around November.
Thank you, Lorna. And just to clarify also, the membership on page 94, the membership shall be determined by the mayor. There's been some discussion about whether this should be a full committee of council or somewhat smaller than that. My feeling at the moment is I would like to see it as a full committee of council so that every councillor has the opportunity to participate. We have online forums now and online participation, which has been embedded in legislation, which hopefully makes it easier and more flexible. But this is quite a way to go. I think Rob's going to do a fabulous job in chairing this, and I know she's eager to get started. Rebecca as deputy chair and hopefully looking after an overview of things on the East Coast as well. But I'm really excited to get this moving. So, Martin, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to check, it talks about council put on page 92, it talks about the 100K side for the administration. Is it correct that the 200K that was allocated in the last term for the last financial year is still available? That's retained?
So you're talking about for the climate change position? Yes, I think Robin asked a similar question at the last council meeting. That's correct.
Oh, thanks. Right.
Great minds, eh?
Okay.
Billy.
So a new sustainability climate change person being recruited and appointed yet?
It's in recruitment at the moment. Yeah.
And the other thing that's worth noting is that this committee has the ability to reach out to people outside of council for advice and guidance and the technical aspects. So this is a committee that I think is going to provide some valuable input to our council and as we move forward, and especially after yesterday's discussions at Future for Local Government conference, we are moving in new directions. And this, I think, will be lined up exactly right to where we need. Okay.
I would be interested to hear the views of the other councillors regarding it being a full committee of council. Somewhat sitting behind my question is, it feels to me like we are getting more and more meetings that we are perhaps expected or not expected to attend, but certainly when there's a meeting that I'm expected to attend, I don't like not attending the meetings. So there ends up being this feeling of letting the side down or something because you can't go to a meeting because it's school holidays, you know, grandkids or whatever. And we have our council meetings, we have regular workshops, we have the risk and assurance meeting, which is a full thing of council. We now got another one, which is going to be another 4 meetings. And I'm just wondering whether we're in danger of overloading councillors. And as I say that, probably I can hear people saying, toughen up, you know, this is what you've signed up for, et cetera, but I would like to express, I'd be interested in others' views.
I'm not saying toughen up.
Valid point. Your thoughts of other councillors. I'm open to ideas. Eric?
Yeah, I just wrote down a few there. We've got council workshops, council meetings, community board meetings times 2, network meetings, A&R meetings, emergency management meetings, transportation meetings. There's a lot of meetings on. I do have to admit that. So it does put pressure on making a decision around the meeting, whether it's valued, will you be there or not. So I think it would be really interesting to go to the first meeting and get an understanding of where it's going to go and what are the drivers. And then if they're heading off in a direction that you can say, well, I can watch and see, I think that would be a great opportunity to whether you can connect then or, you know, come and go. It's my view anyway.
Can I just ask which councillors are very keen to get started and be a part of this? And which ones are quite happy to leave that to the committee and wait till the committee brings their findings to council. So,
Yeah, can I just ask the next case CEO, before I make that decision here? What's the cost difference, Aileen, if any, between running a full council day like this with this particular meeting or just having, you know, 4 councillors? Is there the governance costs, the overall running of the committee, any significant difference?
So it's negligible.
Negligible.
Three sausage rolls and just looking
With transport and
I'd say it's negligible.
negligible, the actual running costs.
It might be slightly more agile with getting dates and stuff.
Yeah, that would make sense with them. Okay, now I'm ready to give my decision, Lee. You go for it.
so what I'm hearing at the moment is Robin, Martin, Delly, King, John, you.
Yeah, I'm happy with this. I've got heaps of time. I'm retired. Yeah, a day out.
So through the chair, what I'm hearing is you need a quorum, you need people who are committed to coming every time. But perhaps to answer Peter's question, if you've got that quorum, if you like, then it becomes hey, there's an interesting agenda for this meeting. I'll jump online or I'll turn up in person because I'm in Teams or whatever. So I'm happy to commit to being part of that quorum. And perhaps having it open to any members of the council to pop into when they want to is a good way forward.
I'm happy to sit there with the same sort of system. Yeah.
Chair.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, I think I know I reflect back on the committees that we had last term, and some of the topics that we discussed at the Emergency Management Committee have come up again in this term. And even though we had elected members sitting around the table then and now, there were things that were discussed at that committee last term that elected members that were there then and now didn't know about. So I think the reporting back to council, if it's not a full committee, is the absolutely critical thing. Because I don't know that it'd be just good enough to read the minutes and sort of tick them off and sign them off, because obviously that has happened, and yet we still had this level of unawareness of some of the things that were discussed at that committee. So that's the critical part, not who sits at the table, but how the information is disseminated from the people who sit there to the people who don't sit there.
John Grant, your thoughts, you prefer to leave it to the
Probably
committee?
leaning towards the overload side a little bit.
Peter, same.
Well, as I said before, I think we're in danger of overloading elected members.
And likewise, we have 2 community boards and now one, so we have extra, a whole lot of extra community boards. 10.
Victor is.
Try 10.
Locked and loaded.
And Terry.
Yeah, well, I'm just on the line of, I'll be watching, the first meeting and just watching and with interest as things come up that we think should engage with. And that report back to the council is fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
Make the difference.
Okay, so the decision from my seat is, the committee will be Roland, Martin, Belly, Ricker, John Morrissey. Yep. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
So does that, sorry, have you just written that up as an extra resolution? What did we just vote on?
Harry's doing it as we speak.
Yeah, I was putting the shape, because thought that maybe it would be useful for us to know what we just voted on.
Pretty coach for you guys, isn't it?
Well, so because it is in the terms of reference to the quorum,
Yes.
so that will need to change.
So have I got the process right in terms of being able to?
Well,
So although point 4 does say delegates authority to CE to make any minor amendments, so we've probably got that covered under that.
so it's really whether we needed a resolution to nominate people to the committee or whether that's just.
I think.
You do, okay, cool,
Even work time.
fantastic.
I don't think membership of committees are minor.
And I think to answer your question about the quorum, Rebecca, the quorum at any meeting will be the majority of members. So we don't need to change that because if we've named the members, then we just have them turn it.
Right.
So that's covered.
Okay.
So a supplementary question. If I were not to be part of the quorum, but it looks like an interesting thing, can I come along to a meeting?
Absolutely.
You're entitled to attend.
Yeah.
Bring your own conference roll.
And we would welcome that at any time.
So it's just an issue of.
If there may be an issue of voting,
Sorry?
if there's an issue of voting, there may be an issue there.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got amended resolution.
So for the, we've made the number 5, so this is the appointment of the councillors as members to the committee. And then we have endorsed the appointment of Councillor Slivir as chairperson and Councillor Judy Percival as the deputy chairperson.
Okay, so there's we'll take those 2 to 6 as a block. Do we need to move and second for those?
Through the chair, you can Scout and Galley can accept the poll in its entirety and then you can move it.
So I'll move it and second Delhi. All those in favour?
Aye.
Yes, Gary, well done. Congratulations. Thank you, Norman. Good work.
Thank you.
Exciting.
Item 2.5 is the Heritage Scheme Subcommittee nomination. Including what you're presenting this from RDR, who's some background. So as you all know, you've been invited to submit councillors.
Representatives.
Is it just councillors or a councillor and?
Through the chair, I'm happy to explain a little bit about it. So this is a subcommittee of Waikato Regional Council and we received a letter to be part of the membership. So it can either be a councillor or a staff. So we had canvassed the other councils and they have appointed an elected member and we are suggesting then we would do the same.
So I've had a discussion around the councillors, and the feeling was that the councillor that we nominated for this would be Thames based. Most of the meetings are now here in Aroa and Haraki area. I've had a chat with Councillor Rodley to sound them out as to whether he'd be happy to do it. He'd be happy to represent us on that. So I'm going to propose that Councillor Rodley is our
I'll second that.
representative. And I'll also propose that we don't have
Could, just through the check, could we have as staff member as an alternate? And will there be a staff member coming along to the meeting?
It says aura. Doesn't say Enda.
I mean, what would Aileen's preference be?
So it's a joint committee, it's flexible for the local government, so I'm not quite sure how that's can be in the committee, so my view is it has to be an elected member. Staff support is possible, but we don't have for experts necessarily from our staff. But there may be matters that you want staff advice on, and it could be any number of staff depending on the issue that comes up. So I think the issues that this committee can deal with can be quite broad, ranging from engineering and sales to procurement to climate change to long-term land use. So that could span any number of staff. But at this stage, we didn't have a single person for it.
I used to attend these when the last council and North Yarra. And it's all around the flood mitigation scheme, which is an amazing piece of thing. And we talk about fish passing pumps and all sorts of things like that, which is pretty impressive stuff, 100 grand a pump. But yeah, so you're into that kind of a field. And Thames is part of that, stormwater or flood protection plan anyway. So having a Thames person really fits.
Okay, so the proposal is that Councillor Rodley is our representative. And we were in a second.
I'll move. Didn't you move?
You can move.
I have moved.
You need to be more.
I'll second.
Okay, so we'll put the motion to those in favour.
Aye.
Aye.
I think you enjoy your question.
Congratulations, Councillor. Gonna have
Those fish passing pumps.
Civil engineer, water engineer, you'll be good.
Sound engineer.
It's sound engineer, IT engineer.
So we're gonna move to item 2.5, which is.
Morning.
Everyone expected.
2.6.
Oh, so this is labeled slightly incorrect. That should be. Yeah. It is essentially organisation, destination, Coromandel Trust and Current Rail Trail Trust. Kirsten, she's online, okay, right. Pretty straightforward. This is just the- Kirsten, is there anything that you wanted to add to this?
No, this is a standard report that we have to provide every 3 years. I take it you've read the report. It's just basically saying that the trust have not been set up for the purpose of being a charitable trust. So there are some tax reasons behind this as to why there would be an exempt an exemption required.
All right, thank you so much. Lord, anything you want to add then?
No, nothing to add. I mean, it is basically procedural. We do this every 3 years. We are coming to council to talk about funding of these organisations as a separate item. But this is something that we actually have to do for audit before, I think it's October. That's correct, Donna.
Okay,
yeah.
So procedural motion, I'll move from the chair. Martin and then Kelly.
Just a query around destination Hauraki Coromandel. But I had the understanding that was a RTO.
So they're a destination management organisation. So that all areas have destination management organisations to help support managing tourism and also marketing. But depending on how it's set up with each council or each economic agency, is different. So with us, it is a CCO for our area.
So it's not an RTO.
Not, well, no, it's changed from an RTO to a destination management organisation.
Right, but it's,
RTO is the same thing. It's like,
right, so it still gets tourism funding.
well, it had to apply through
And
central government.
It has like a contract with them and stuff.
Not the central government, not so much, no. It belongs to a destination, like an RTO agency. They're all affiliated, all the destination management companies are affiliated and they pay a fee. And that's to help lobby government for certain issues. They're not funded by central government. We fund them and Hauraki Council fund our one.
Okay.
So through the chair, the Hauraki, Destination Hauraki Coromandel, when will that come to, is that going to come to a workshop? Yeah, to a workshop next week. Fantastic, because we have been asked for more money. Potentially. Thank you.
But that's it. All right, so I'll put the motion on those in favour.
Yeah, you need to see.
I need to second it.
Yeah.
Those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you.
We're up with a lovely list.
Amazing.
Little sketches.
So what I might suggest is if people not thinking. So I've got on here 2.6, but that should be 2.7. So 2.7, which is gross scenario for long-term planning. So we're receiving the report. I will move the receipts from the chair. Can I have a second? Peter, thank you so much. Leslie, thank you. We've workshopped this, we've landed on a place. And Leslie, did you have anything to add to?
Jen, no, I don't have anything to add. I think it's self-explanatory. We'll be looking for confirmation of some of the discussions that happened at that workshop, that we use the medium growth scenario.
I have Chair, I have a question. The introduction was to informatics, produce reductions of population households dwelling rating units to support the long-term plan and other processes. I know I sound like a broken record, but this relates to 48% of the properties. We're still ignoring the 52% who are absentee. When you look at the figures there and the ages and things, Whanganui are the got the oldest age group, but we don't actually, because when we come in Easter time and all the other people come, we've got a very young population. And a lot of those people are ones that move on and often become permanents, but I don't think it's reflected in the report, actually. It just seems to me that it's the elephant in the room and everyone forgets about it.
Chair, I don't think we forget. I think these figures are taken from census.
Yeah, and that's the point, and that's the point, because we have our funding based on the census who are living here permanently, and it's ignored, and the government has to acknowledge we have all these other properties that need infrastructure, and this is the way they get themselves out of it, by just only looking at the permanent.
Chair, we also do a peak population study. And we commission that separately from the growth projection, so we have a pretty good idea of what peak population.
Oh, we do know from the people who pay rates and all the properties. I agree, but that isn't in this report, and then that's the only comment I'm making. I do.
Thank you, Councillor Godley, but we did workshop this extensively, and it is quite a challenging district to land on below medium high growth. It is quite a challenging district. I commend Leslie and Ryan for the work they've done on this. Not an easy one, but I think we've landed on a place which seems to fit.
And just a comment from me, we do refer to rating units, yes, in the report, which includes all of the absentee vote. And the rating units an important thing to base our infrastructure planning on, so it does cover that rather than population, that's just comes and goes.
Yeah, we just miss out through the government funding through.
Yeah, that's always, discussion with Queenstown recently, the same challenges.
So I just got a comment. I've taken the sort of the medium approach to this, and it does show some growth around the Coromandel in different areas. And will that be a focus on infrastructure to make sure that that growth will continue, obviously. So it'd be interesting forward that how that pans out in terms of as those areas start to develop or look for development, and the council fits with that and making sure that they can support that development through seeing the benefits it brings to those countries. So yeah, we'll take it and see where it goes.
Any further questions? All right, so we'll put the motion, all those in favour?
Aye.
Yes, thank you, Leslie, thank you, Brian. Yep.
Yeah, 2.8 there.
I'm going to suggest that we have morning tea. Yes.
Oh, they don't stay there, Leslie.
Councillor Morrissey.
On the motion, a second. Oh, it's a tea.
The thing that worries me is.
All right, so those online, if you're going to stop for morning tea, and we will come back.
Oh.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you.